welcome to Whitby Guernsey Knit. My name is Alana, and if you watched episode 1, you will know that I was setting the scene on knitting a Guernsey for my brother-in-law's big birthday in February. Thank you for all those people who watched and your comments. They really were appreciated and are appreciated because they're so useful. Right, it is episode 2 and I really need to get my skates on, as episode 1 took so long for me to record, edit and upload on YouTube. Hopefully I will get a bit better. So the stage in episode 2 is to get the wool and the pattern and begin really. So I looked online and found a company called Frangipani wools who stock Guernsey wool. Unfortunately, it said they only supply to the trade, but there was a phone number and a website to contact Caroline at Gorgeous Wools. I will put the information for Frangipani and Caroline in the description box, because on the Frangipani website there's a lot of really relevant and useful information, and Caroline went above and beyond. She was so helpful. So I phoned for the colour swatch on the Wednesday and it arrived by Friday. So that was excellent service, and here it is. Now look at all those colours, absolutely amazing. But I want to do the traditional navy. I love the other colours, the other navies, but it's a traditional one. So I'm going to do the navy. While I was on talking to Caroline, she well, I asked her about a pattern basically, because I don't feel I'm experienced enough to devise my own pattern, and she said she had a free pattern that she would put in for me, and here it is. I'm so grateful to Caroline. She told me that if I wanted a looser Guernsey, because they were knit so tightly in the past to keep the fishermen really warm, if I wanted a looser one to go 2 sizes bigger, she told me how much yarn I would need. Really, really informative. She couldn't be more helpful. So when this swatch arrived on the Friday, I phoned up straight away and ordered my wool. And the wool arrived on the Monday. What incredible service. Caroline and Frangipani are based in Cornwall. But there's a little bit of Yorkshire, because the wool, 100% British wool from sheep raised in the English countryside, worsted, spun and dyed in Yorkshire, exclusively for Frangipani. So Whitby is in North Yorkshire and I'm using Yorkshire wool. So my wool's arrived, I've got a pattern, I have my 5 size 13 needles, and the first thing I need to do is a swatch to see my tension. So I'm going to now do a little video and put it in with this for the swatch. So I'll see you in a short while. So I'm getting on with the tension swatch now. I'm going to begin the tension swatch. So I've taken I only need 2 needles for this, so I'm just going to use these double pointed needles, and the tension recommended by the Guernsey pattern from Frangipani is approximately 32 stitches and 36 rows to 4 inches or 10 centimetres on these size 13 needles, which are 2¼ millimetre. So we're going to to see if this is the correct tension, and I will have to adjust. So to do a tension swatch, you need to measure it. So there's no point me doing 32 stitches and 36 rows. I need to do a little bit extra at each side and on the length, so I can use a tape measure to measure them and count the stitches, which I'll show you how to do. So I've got my beautiful yarn, and let's begin with the cast on. So I take my yarn, and it says 32 stitches, so I think I will do 50 stitches. So I need my length of yarn, do a slip knot, which is just cross over and loop through, and tighten up, and you need the bit that you are going to knit with at this side. So I'm going to cast on now 50 stitches. So I've casted on 1, the slip knot's 1. I'm using the thumb method, which is wind the wool around my thumb, slip through the needle, loop the wool that's on the reel over my needle, go over and tighten. So there's 2 on now. So I'll try and do that again. Thumb round, needle through, and I always keep hold of that extra, that length of wool. A loop around the needle with my cone wool, slip the loop over. That's 3 stitches. I always like my line underneath to be quite level, so I tend to pull quite tightly, which sometimes causes a problem when you're trying to knit. But so round, through, over, off, round, through, over, off, round, through, over, off. And I'm going to continue that way until I get 50 stitches on. Count how many I've got, spread it across so I can see. $34. And there's my 50 on. So what I'm going to do now, the recommended amount of rows is 36, so I'll do probably 40. So I'll show you how to do, and I'm going to do it in stocking stitch because that is what the main body of the garment is. And stocking stitches, knit 1 row. I'm not really going to show, well, I'm not going to show you how to knit. If you would like me to demonstrate how to do stocking stitch, knit one row, purl one row, you could comment and I'll gladly do a little clip for you to show you how to do that. So I'll get to the end of this row, and already I can tell that it is quite closely knit, and I will show you something else that I'm currently knitting, which is on 4-ply, which is a bit thinner than this 5-ply Guernsey wool, but is a lot looser knit. So you can see why the fishermen had these Guernseys, as they would keep them warm, a lot warmer. So that's my first row completed. So I will meet you back when I have completed my 40 rows. Okay. Okay, so I've knitted 50 rows, not 40. I've done 50, so I've got a little bit of extra to pull, so I can measure in between the size recommended. So I'm now on my final row, which is a purl row, and you can see it's rolled up, it's quite tight. So let's get the final row knitted, and I will cast off. I will show you how I cast off when I get to the end of the row. Right, cast off. Those little markers are just stitch markers, because as I was knitting up, I realised it was quite a dark day. It's quite a dark day, and it was difficult to see, so every so often I put a stitch marker so I knew where I was and didn't have to recount them. So it's now cast off time, so it's just, this is how I cast off. Knit 2 and then yarn over needle. So knit 1, then the yarn goes over the loop, the loop goes over the stitch you've just knitted. So knit, there's 2 there, so I put my needle through and over and on. This can be a quite tight cast off and sometimes when I'm knitting garments that need to be sewn up, I tend to cast off with a thicker needle, a bigger needle. You don't need to for this. It's a very dark and stormy day today, so everything is quite difficult to see. Okay, so I'm left with a loop. I'll cut my wool and just put the wool through, and there you are. Can you see how tight it is? So I'm going to pin that onto some card now and show you how to measure. You can actually get, I saw on a video I was watching, you can actually get a tool that you can lay over your swatch and it will measure in between, I think, but anyway, I haven't got one of those. So let's pin that there, like that. Pin at the bottom. I'm pinning this onto some card with it being so curly. It was a good job I knitted extra lines, otherwise I would have really struggled to measure this. Right, so the recommended tension swatch is approximately 32 stitches and 36 rows to 10 centimetres. So I've got my tape measure. So 10 centimetres. It's there, roughly. pinning there. To there. So now I need to count, and it is really difficult to see. So I am going to have to get my glasses on for this. I will just press pause. Okay, so I've measured and put pins between 10 centimetres. I haven't knitted 50 rows, I've knitted 40 rows and it says 36 rows. My tension, and it usually is what it says when I'm knitting anything. So I don't know if you can see this very well at all. Try and angle it. But I've counted 3 times and it says 32 stitches and I count 31, roughly 31, and 36 stitches to the 4 inches. Sorry, 36 rows to the 4 inches. So my tension is okay. On the free Guernsey pattern from Frangipani, they say the Guernsey is just a rectangle with no shaping. So once you have the tension, your tension, you know how many stitches to cast on and how many rows to knit. You can get the exact size you need. And this tension, the tight tension, gives a traditional firm fabric, but you may prefer a softer feel. So if you do prefer a softer feel, you need to get a thicker needle. And I'll just show you, as I was saying earlier, this is in 4-ply, which is slightly thinner than the Guernsey wool. I don't know if you can see that. Slightly thinner than the Guernsey wool. But because I've knitted it in with bigger needles, thicker needles, these are 3 3/4 millimetre, whereas the Guernsey is 3 1/4. You can see that tension is a lot looser. So that's a tension swatch. Right, so that was how to do a swatch. So that took me, over the course of a day, 1 hour and 45 minutes. So I will record the time it takes me to do the Guernsey, but now I'm going to cast on. So I will get my pattern. I've read the pattern, and it's really, really important to read the pattern to just get an idea of what you are doing, what you're aiming for. So you can either knit this pattern on 2 needles, or you can knit it in the round or on your 5 needles. So as it's a traditional as far as I can be, I'm going to knit it in the round. So I shall get my size. The only thing I'm slightly concerned about is with them being tight, I need to see how loose my brother-in-law wants it without him knowing. So I've got a jumper of his and I'm going to cast on and then measure the welt to see if it's roughly the same size, and I will have to adjust accordingly, take it all off. Right, so for the cast on. Now, when I've read about Guernseys, a lot of the fisher wives knitted the welt in double wool. So I wasn't going to do that. It makes it more robust. I wasn't really going to do that. But when I've read my free pattern, it suggests doubling the wool. So I will do that. So I'm going to cast on now and I will get back to you. And cast on using 2 strands of wool like it said in the pattern. Now the welts are knitted on 2 needles because if you look at the pattern, where is it here? If you look at the pattern, there's a little split up the side. I like that. So the front welt on 2 and the back welt, and then you will join. So I'm knitting size 42, so I need to cast on 160 stitches. But it's this double length of wool that is tricky. So you need to make a slip knot using 2 strands of wool. Stick through and onto your needle. So there's 1 on. And then the next one, you wrap the yarn round your thumb anti-clockwise twice, slip your needle in, yarn over needle, pull off your thumb, slip over and pull tight. But can you see how loose it is there? And you've got to get that done so it's tight there. 1. So that's 2. So this is going to take a long time. So round, over and down. So I'm going to persevere with this. Actually, I need to record how long it's going to take me because that's the first hurdle, and I will get back to you. Okay, right, I've casted on 158 stitches. I need for my size 160. So I'm just going to show you 2 more. Now I've looked on YouTube videos and there are different ways of doing this. I'll also give you a link from the Frangipani website with a YouTube site showing you the cast on method. So I'm going to do this. I haven't learned any quicker. It has taken me about 1 hour 10 minutes to do this because I've had to have 2 goes, and then I looked down and it still wasn't as tight as I wanted it, and then the final go, when I looked, my loops had come off at the other end. So I have put some white tack on the end to stop that happening. If you're not knitting one as big, you might not have that problem, but while I'm knitting on 2 needles, that's what I'm going to do. I think you probably can get some stoppers or something to put them on, but I haven't got any and I need to get on. So there's 160 stitches on my needle, and I now need to knit 1, purl 1, so rib. For Frangipani recommend 25 rows, but that's entirely up to you. So for knit 1, purl 1, I'm not going to show you how to do that. If you want me to show you it, I can do a video to show you how to do that. So you need your make sure you've got your yarn going the correct way, so you've got the correct yarn onto the spool. So knit 1, purl 1, all the way to the end. There are also a couple of ways of doing knit 1, purl 1. I'm just showing you because how tight it is for me, because I wanted that line at the bottom for the hem really straight, so it's quite tight. There are a couple of different ways of doing knit 1, purl 1, and you can knit 1 into the back of the loop, but when I've looked at the fisherman's Guernseys, the older ones, they seem to be just knit 1 into the front of the needle. So when I have done 25 or so rows, I will get back to you and show you the next stage.